It's Trade Town on the Sonic Truth Podcast. I'm Alan Seslowsky of RotoWire.com, along with Theo Gremminger. You follow him as I do at the OG Fantasy. And of course, Matt Kelly, the Podfather, is here. You follow him at Fantasy_Mansion, as we all do. Wow, what a victory for Player Profiler this week, right, guys? I mean, I remember scoffing at you and watching you take some venom on Twitter this week, guys, where you had Rachaad White ranked as a top 12, top 15 dynasty running back as soon as the Super Bowl was over. And people were telling you that they were going to unsubscribe to your service. And you said, just hang on a second here. Hang on. Just give us a minute here for this all to percolate. And sure enough, Matt Kelly, what happened? Where do you have him now?
Todd Bowles says he wants Rachaad White to be a 3-down back. Not that he wants him to develop into a 3-down back, that he wants to use him as a 3-down back. Because guess what, guys? Guess what, Theo? Guess what, Alan? Guess what? Guess what's true about Rachaad White? Guess what's true? Guess what?
Tell us.
He is a 3-down back! He's obviously a 3-down back. He's awesome. He's got day 3. You know, he's a day 2 running back with 3-down skill set. I got day 3 and skill set mixed up there. The days and the skills. He's got skills for days. That's really what the deal is, guys. He's awesome. And yes, I know in a small sample, he wasn't as efficient as we wanted him to be, as he could have been. That's okay. That's why we zoom out. He was ultra efficient, productive, and a target magnet in college at a Power 5 conference school. He is happening because not only is he big and athletic with this 3-down skill set, he also is an incredibly hard worker, very high dog rating from Cody. So he's checking boxes across the board. This is how a running back convinces the organization to commit to him. You need to check all these boxes. If you don't, you're Ronald Jones, right? If you don't have that work ethic, if you don't have that skill set, but you have just the draft capital, that ain't enough. As we've seen with Ronald Jones and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 2 of the running backs we were the rightest on, right as rain. And we're right on both sides. We're not just critics. We're not just right when we fade guys. We're also right when we prop guys up, when we're the highest, the most bullish in the industry on a player. Boom! Right? And I know it's coach speak. And I know normally if this was about players we're not as high on, we would ignore it. And that's true. That's true. This is confirming our priors. Yes. Am I waving a flag here on something that doesn't actually mean much? Fair. But listen, what it has done is that it has spurred conversations. It has increased the value of Rachaad White in Dynasty already, right? Joe Beldner, writer for Player Profiler, one of our top analysts, he was meditating on Rachaad White and came out on Twitter and said that, hey, if he can survive the NFL draft, and they have a lot of needs, right? They've shed a lot of quality players, a lot of contracts in Tampa. The last thing they're going to prioritize is running back now. They lost a guy named Tom Brady. I don't know if you guys, Tom Brady. Tom Brady. Lost him. So Joe thinks he could be the steal of dynasty drafts this offseason. Well, Joe is essentially, he's doing the opposite of preaching to the choir. He's preaching to the uninitiated. He's preaching to the non-converts, right? The Player Profiler users, those that have our Dynasty rankings, go to PlayerProfiler.com, subscribe to our Dynasty Deluxe, and you can see where we've had Rachaad White all along, baby. So he's saying, hey, guys, we this tweet isn't for you. This is for everyone else that is allowing Rachaad White to slip in these Dynasty startups. Shame on all you people. We win again. Player Profiler wins again.
Yeah. Theo, when they signed Chase Edmonds, that's like the perfect guy that you want behind Rachaad White.
Yeah, 100%. We talked about this on the Sonic Truth Pod before about how the Chase Edmonds signing already, kind of pointed towards Rachaad White being a winner this offseason. The Todd Bowles coach speak just, further cements that. And they showed you how much they like Rachaad White last year when they had Super Bowl aspirations and they chose to go with Rachaad White on day 2 when they had Leonard Fournette, when they had Gio Bernard, when they had multiple options at the running back position. They still went in that direction to add White. So they obviously really liked his profile. We also heard how they were connected towards Breece Hall last year. They pass on Breece Hall and then they still add White. So they already showed us how much they care about him last year. And now he's getting to be a 3-down back. And I get that the Bucs are going to change with Baker Mayfield behind center, but you're still talking about Rachaad White last year had to share a backfield with a running back who had 73 receptions. And I get Tom Brady's out of town, but Rachaad White is going to catch passes this year. He's not going to catch 73 of them, but I think he's a safe bet with his makeup and profile and his skill set. I think he's just really a safe bet for 40 plus. And I think he could get into the 50s this year as a receiver. So, like, where we have him, I think is very correct. And I think I agree that he's a guy that people should be prioritizing as adding to their dynasty rosters through trade if they don't already have some. You don't want to have no Rachaad White right now because I feel like the market, once we get past draft night, it's a little bit of a risk. They could obviously add a back that we like on draft night. But if he survives draft night, I mean, he's going to be like a rocket ship in dynasty.
Yeah, when he was taking carries in Tampa, he was getting stuffed. His stuffed run rate was 20%. Think about that. If you think about the timeline of when he was actually starting and getting the majority of the carries in Tampa for a handful of games, it was when the offensive line was at its most injured. So don't wave around his 3.7 yards per carry and say, oh, he's not efficient. No, look deeper, right? His juke rate, evaded tackles per touch, there he was top 40, right? His yards created per touch, top 40, whereas his true yards per carry was outside the top 60, right? So when you look at metrics that he can control on his own, he was impressive for a rookie, right? He was twice as good in metrics like juke rate and yards created per touch than he was in, say, yards per carry. And then in the passing game, he was top 30 in yards per reception and top 20 in yards per route run. So it only got better once you looked at his passing game efficiency. And when you contextualize Rachaad White's rookie year, he was actually impressive.
If you think Rachaad White is going to be a top 12 dynasty running back, I want you to click the like button. And if you don't think he could be a top 12 running back in dynasty, I want you to comment absolutely not or any derogatory term that you want in the comments. So if you think Rachaad White's top 12, hit like. If you don't think so, no in the comments. Who's a running back?
I'm curious. I'm genuinely curious, Alan. I want to read the comments. I'm going to go back and read the comments of the show. I'm genuinely curious about the people that are fading Rachaad White this offseason in Dynasty. Why? Yes, we know the offense isn't going to be as good, right? Yes, we know that. That's baked in. But everything else is clicking into place, including their offensive line is going to be healthy. It's a quality offensive line when healthy. So I'm dying to know from all you commenters that do not think that Rachaad White is worth an early pick in a startup. Why?
And what's interesting enough, guys, is that I don't think the Lamar Jackson saga is over. I want to talk about that. And if he could go to Tampa, the 19th pick is what Tampa has. That could be part of that deal on draft night. But first, let's take a quick break. And we come back, we'll address some of the trade rumors.
People always ask me, hey, what is the World Series of fantasy or the Super Bowl of fantasy football? And it's easy. It's the FFPC, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. It's a $6 million prize pool. And they've had their Never Too Early Best Ball leagues cranking since February. And so the FFPC is the answer to so many questions. Hey, where's the best place to get a Dynasty Orphan? Well, you can adopt a Dynasty Orphan at the FFPC. That's why we partner with them. If you want to play fantasy football for low, medium, high stakes, seasonal, best ball, dynasty, go to the FFPC. And don't forget, promo code Underworld to get you $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team, no matter what team it is, no matter what format it is, at the FFPC. Go do it.
Wow, look at that spot, man. I like the sparkling Underworld promo code. I got to give props where props are due. Well done on the custom graphics player profiler. Just a quick reset.
It's just iMovie, Alan.
Yeah, well,
it's just iMovie. It's just I did that in iMovie. I'm not good with motion graphics. That's just me playing around with iMovie. That's Apple. Thanks, Steve Jobs. Rest in peace, Steve Jobs.
Shout out Steve Jobs.
What
shout
a
out.
guy.
Big shout out.
He did that. Steve Jobs did that video.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Steve Jobs has been gone a long time. iMovie, yeah, I guess iMovie's been around a long time, so they have had time to develop it. iMovie is really a plug-and-play video editing. So if you want to get out into the world of video editing, that's how I started doing it as well. It really is pretty intuitive, just like everything Apple makes. Let's do a quick reset, guys. I'm Alan Seslowsky of RotoWire.com, host of the Sonic Truth Podcast. Of course, I'm here with Theo Gremminger and Matt Kelly, the podfather of Player Profiler. And before the break, guys, we were talking about Rachaad White. And what I think could spike his value even further is I want to address some of the rumors before we get into some FFPC specific talk here is Lamar Jackson. That whole situation has not been solved. I know fantasy has been talking about it for a month, but it's going to be solved soon. What happens if Tampa Bay offers the contract that he's looking for, pick 19 and next year as well? Could that be an additional boon for his value, Theo?
I mean, absolutely. If Lamar Jackson ends up being the quarterback in Tampa Bay, I think it would be a boost to the entire offense. And I know that, obviously with the wide receivers, you would have concerns about the passing volume, et cetera. But I think the overall quality of the offense would kind of push that up, the touchdown scoring opportunities. Yeah, if Lamar Jackson ends up in Tampa Bay, that would be a massive, massive addition for Rachaad White. I mean,
what kind of question is that? Is Lamar Jackson an upgrade over Baker Mayfield? What are you talking about, Alan? What the fuck are you talking about? Are you on your game today? Did you get some sleep last night?
Does it make him?
Because you're not even reading the show sheet. We're supposed to talk about orphans. We're supposed to talk about the FFPC orphans. You did a whole reset. You did a whole reset. I thought you were resetting yourself. I thought you were getting your head out of your fucking ass. And then you're asking one of the most obvious questions I've ever heard. Hey guys, would you consider Lamar Jackson an upgrade on Baker Mayfield? What are you talking about?
That wasn't the
question. In the context of Rachaad White. In the context of Rachaad White.
Oh, yes, because Lamar Jackson would take away some touchdowns and
you figured it out.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. The volume for Rachaad White would go down, especially in the red zone. Yes. Yes, there would be a slightly less red zone touches with Lamar Jackson, but there's also a lot more long runs. There's a lot more overall touchdowns too, right? And there's just many more sustained drives, as Theo said. So yeah, it's not okay. Alan, I apologize. Alan, that's not as egregious as just the overall sentiment of how much better off, because with Mike Evans, he's hurt either way, right? Mike Evans is hurt by quarterbacks that can't throw to the perimeter. And we know that Lamar Jackson struggles throwing to the boundary. We know that Baker Mayfield can't throw to the outside the hash. So it's bad either way. But we have gotten questions, right? We have gotten questions from listeners because we keep talking about startups and getting into dynasty leagues. And the listeners want to know, okay, you guys keep talking about these dynasty leagues. It's not actually that easy to join a dynasty league. Can you help me figure out the best way to join a dynasty league? Can we give some assistance, some real actual help to listeners? Is that something we can do, Alan?
Yeah, well, I just asked Theo right before we turned the lights on. I was looking for some of those $77 FFPC leagues just because I want to get my feet wet in FFPC. I'm in 40 dynasty leagues. 0 of them are in FFPC. Talking about it on the show has got me excited to get in there. So, Theo, explain what's going on with our partners over at the FFPC and how we're going to actually get some people into these leagues.
Well, the easiest way to get into a dynasty league right now through the FFPC is purchasing an orphan. There's some very good deals on orphans right now. I check them pretty regularly. I've added a couple orphans myself this offseason through the FFPC and also through our friends at the Dynasty Depot.
You
Alan,
adopted,
where you were on.
Theo. That's so nice.
I did. We have part two of my orphan series is going to be on Player Profiler this week. Talking about the Joe Burrow trade I made for the orphan. I pulled off a very nice Joe Burrow trade right around cut day, Matt and Alan. You guys didn't even hear about this one.
Can you tell us? This is Trade Town. Welcome to Trade Town.
Welcome to Trade Town, real life Trade Town, guys.
Yeah.
I sent Trey Lance, who we talked about the beat up Trey Lance asset right now, and I moved the 111, and this is single quarterback, and I picked up Joe Burrow, and I'm happy about that. I think that was my quarterbacks were Jared Goff and Trey Lance, and I don't like moving a late first, and I kind of talked about this in the article that's coming out. I don't like moving a first for a quarterback, but I think for a guy like Joe Burrow, I'm into it with a late first, and I also have the 202 and the 204. So a lot of the guys that we like at the 111, I would probably have exposure to at the 202 as well. So I'm thrilled about getting Burrow with that team, but yeah, that team is going to be a very fun orphan because I also have the 102 and the 104 and a bunch of seconds. So I'm all about that one. But you can go get yourself an orphan as well at the FFPC right now. If you just click on Dynasty at the top of the page, there will be a button where you can see all the available orphans, and there are absolutely some deals right now. I see a $250 orphan for $1 right now, and then you would have to pay half of the following season down payment, but it's a little beat up, but it is $1. Let's find a decent one.
If it's $1, it's more than a little beat up.
Can we salvage this team though? Can we paint a picture, guys? Okay, here you go. Daniel Jones, and then Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. So nothing great at quarterback, but not disgusting. Pacheco, Jamal Williams, Javonte Williams, and Samaje Perine. Okay, so you have the hurt Denver back, and you have the guy we like in Samaje right now. Then you have Jahan Dotson, Adam Thielen, Drake.
Before
London.
you go off,
wow,
before you go down the list, I'm curious, guys. Though, what do you think that most people that are adopting these orphans are looking for? Are they looking for a good team of 5th and 4th round picks? Are they looking for draft picks, even though those middling picks are probably a little bit more going to give you more production? So what do you think it is, guys, that the people are looking for?
I think it's both. I think that some people will be more attracted to teams with more picks, and some people want to go compete in year one. And you can find many teams on this list right now with some big time fantasy assets. I think a lot of people cut down on dynasty teams. Some people just don't want to spend the money this year, and FFPC has a platform where they'll easily find new managers to replace them. So the orphans page is just a great one to go through right now. There must be well over 100 orphan teams right now for sale. And again, I'm looking at a lot of 250s that are $129 or $1 or $79, $99. They're trying to do new startups, so they want to get rid of the orphans. So you're seeing them on sale right now.
They will fill.
100%.
These leagues fill. The reason I love the FFPC is because they have the best track record of leagues not folding and always filling. And if you want to participate in a startup, where's a good place to look for that? Because most of the FFPC startups, that really kicks off next month, right? Startup season at the FFPC is really post-NFL draft, right?
There'll be some in the next week or two. They sent out an email saying that they'll come out, but then, like you said, Matt, yeah, there'll be a few coming up. Yeah, so
I like it. Okay, so sign up for their newsletter and look out for that. What are some other ways to find dynasty leagues, though?
Alan, maybe you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, well, Sleeper Chat. Sleeper is, when Sleeper was created, there's actually a great interview with the CEO online, and it's not really meant to be a fantasy football app, even though it's one of the best fantasy football apps out there. It's actually a social media platform, more like GroupMe or WhatsApp, oh yeah, you happen to play fantasy football on it. So as you get, if you're not on sleep, if you're on Sleeper, you know what I'm talking about. You end up in these groups with like you kind of, just like in your friends, you have like different text groups, right? It's like you and 3 of your friends, and there's another text group with you and like 8 other guys, and there's some crossover. You end up in these chat groups in Sleeper, and then people are posting leagues all the time, new leagues, existing leagues. So just get in there. A friend of a friend will help you find out about it. You could search leagues, get in public leagues, and before you know it, you're going to have 40 dynasty leagues like me and be in complete hell during the season.
Isn't there the Dynasty Depot? What's that?
So the Dynasty Depot is affiliated with the FFPC, and it's a place where people can buy and sell their dynasty teams. So the FFPC website has teams for sale. So some managers like to go through the FFPC, but I have purchased teams and sold teams for a profit through the Dynasty Depot. So the Dynasty Depot also has a podcast that Alan and I have been on with our friend Nelson Verbit. But the company basically, you look at it, it's kind of like eBay pricing where you can put a buy it now price. You can also bid, and it has a time limit. You can set it for 24 hours or 3 days or however long you like. And then you have, once it is expired, you have an option to sell the team at whatever's been bid on, or you can relist it. So it's a nice little addition. There's certainly more teams available on the FFPC site, but the Dynasty Depot might have some pretty attractive teams,
like better teams than a typical orphan. So
Yes,
if you're underwhelmed by orphans, you feel like, okay, this orphan is a bit hollowed out, and there's probably some super teams in this league because of it. I don't like my chances. You may look for a better, higher quality team on Dynasty Depot.
You got it, Matt Kelly, because he doesn't even call them orphans over there. He calls them it's a resale market.
Yeah.
Some people are literally drafting teams and then posting them the minute they're done drafting them with the idea that they could make a profit on it. So in the past, I know there's no more $77 teams. Somebody would draft a 77er and it would be loaded with win now, almost guaranteed to be a top 4 team, and sell it for $150 that next day. That happens on the Dynasty Depot.
If you want to compete against me, I just found a team with a team in one of my leagues on FFPC.com, a 500 that you can buy for $49, Matt, plus the half down payment for the following season, with Aaron Rodgers, Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder as QBs, running backs Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley, Miles Sanders, wide receivers Mike Williams, Tyler Lockett, Cameron, and then tight ends Evan Engram, Dawson Knox, and Logan Thomas. And then they have the 103 and the 203 single QB. So, $49, you can kind of paint yourself a picture that you could rebuild that team, Matt.
I can't believe that we have a late add to the chat here. Little Miss GM apparently wasn't listening. I don't understand. Maybe she's catching up with the stream. I don't know what's going on, but she's saying that Rachaad White has potential, but the yards after contact and broken tackle rate were concerning. I addressed this. I preemptively addressed this. You can't be that concerned when we're talking about a handful of carries behind one of the worst offensive lines, the most injured offensive line in the sport. I mean, how many attempts did he have? He had only 129 carries. That is a small sample trap. Okay, we talk about this time and time and time again. Do you know the players that lead the league in broken tackles? That's why we don't have broken tackles. Why don't you have broken tackles on Player Pro? No, we have evaded tackles. Because there's plenty of would-be tackles that there's at no point the defender touching the running back because the running back juked him out of his shoes. Remember Dion Lewis? Once upon a time, Dion Lewis had an incredible evaded tackle rate on Player Profiler, but his broken tackle rate wasn't that good. It was actually worse than Carlos Hyde's. Why? Because these grinders that run to contact end up breaking more tackles than players that just run around defenders or just avoid contact altogether, right? So the running to contact is bad. So rewarding all these broken tackles is actually backward thinking, right? Yes, you want a running back to be able to create yards on his own. That's where you have metrics like, yards created and yards created per touch. And Rachaad White was above average in those metrics. He wasn't great, but he was also a rookie running back. So the bottom line is take a step back, focus more on his passing game usage, which was impressive, and the fact that he has an 84th percentile speed score, 87th percentile burst score, and had a dominant college resume, 87th percentile college dominator rating, 98th percentile college target share. He was targeted on close to 20% of the targets at Arizona State. That is a massive number. That is an absolute massive number. And so you have all these top 5 running backs every year, and their ability to break tackles is not necessarily top 5, but what do they have? Explosiveness. What do they have? Pass catching ability. And they may break fewer tackles than these between the tackles grinders. That's okay. So this idea that I found this one metric, which actually indicates that a player is more likely to run to contact than not, and that's concerning. And that makes me want to go in a different direction at running back. Okay, go ahead. Sure. Go ahead. Go draft the guy that runs the 4.65. Sure. Yeah. Good luck with that. Right, Theo? Theo, I know, is a convert. Right? Theo, I know, especially in the last few years, has really embraced this idea of running back versatility and explosiveness being the primary thing that you look for. Right, Theo?
I mean, absolutely. And Matt, anybody who's a Player Profiler subscriber also drafted Rachaad White, so they don't need to worry about trading for him because he's it. And we don't need to overthink backs like Rachaad White is just the main takeaway here. When a back like this has the volume and he has guys like Chase Edmonds behind him, this is the kind of situation we want to embrace. So this, I don't think we really need to overthink Rachaad White. He's a very talented player, and he's in a great situation right now.
Listen, there's going to be a run or two off tackle where, hey, man, a different running back maybe could have gotten an extra yard breaking a tackle there, Theo. That's something I got to get worried about. That's a red flag.
Yep. He'll make up for it with 60 receptions, guys.
Thank
55
you!
receptions. Yeah. So that's all we care about. That's all we care about.
God. There's
all right, we're gonna
forest and then there's trees.
We're gonna put Rachaad White talk to bed. You should be taking him as a top 12 running back if you agree with this. And again, if you don't, you'll be suffering and when you take someone else or another position player, and you're going to be like, damn, I wish I had Rachaad White. So that's another reason to subscribe early to the Dynasty rankings over on PlayerProfiler.com. I want to get into some of the trade rumors, not just that could happen mostly that affect fantasy. But
this is Trade Town after all.
This is Trade Town today. This is Trade Town on the Sonic Truth Podcast. And guys, I think at this point, it's more of a possibility that Trey Lance gets traded in the real NFL than doesn't. I still think it's close to 50-50, but I'm going to call it 55-45. I could see the case why not, but let's just go down that road where if he does get traded.
What's more likely, Trey Lance gets traded or Dalvin Cook?
Dalvin Cook.
Dalvin Cook, because it's cheaper and it doesn't take as much chutzpah, as my grandma used to say, to trade for Dalvin Cook. It's a 4th round pick. I mean, when you're trading for Trey Lance, you're basically you're starting the clock on your GM time if you're GM and you're trading for a black box prospect, as you call them.
Yeah, you're a real mensch, Alan. You really are. I'm sorry I yelled at you earlier. I really am. It was uncalled for.
Oh, wow.
You can tell I really wanted orphan talk, and I was worried you were skipping over it. I was infuriated. And then I lashed out. I lashed out inappropriately at what was a very good question about the potential that Lamar Jackson could suck the oxygen out of the room in the red zone on Rachaad White. I appreciate that. Also, Lamar Jackson does not have a history of targeting the running back in the passing game. So it was a much better question than I gave you credit for. I apologize. I misheard
you.
Trust
the process.
And
Trust the process.
I had blinders on. I was infuriated about your not following the show sheet, and so that it won't happen again. But it will happen again. But
I don't believe that.
It will happen again. I'm not going to say it won't happen again because it definitely will happen again. Trey Lance to Tennessee for Malik Willis and a 1st round pick. Who says no?
I mean, they both say yes. This is an easy yes on both sides. It makes too much sense, right? The 49ers need a first round pick, right, Theo? And Malik Willis still has that potential upside. He gives you whatever upside that 49ers wanted with Trey Lance. It still exists in Malik Willis.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, essentially to me, would be the first round pick for Trey Lance. I'm not so sure about Malik Willis and San Francisco looking at him as anything more than a depth piece if they did this. But I don't know. To me, I would like to see it. I think that would be a salvageable situation for Trey Lance. But I do, like Matt talked about it, the fact that San Francisco is moving off of him, potentially that should scare you a lot. Just because you get to a new landing spot doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work out. So dynasty managers going out and like trading for Trey Lance right now, I don't think that's necessarily the best process.
Yeah, I saw you traded him away, as you said. I think this is great because I guess then what happens with Ryan Tannehill, Podfather, if they trade for Trey Lance needs to start right away. I mean, there's no more time to sit him behind a Ryan Tannehill, who we know is probably the 17th or 20th best quarterback in the NFL at this point.
Yes. You want Trey Lance going anywhere else. It's fine. It's so weird, too, because he could be epic on San Francisco. But I think we just need to come to the realization and come to terms with the fact it's not going to happen there. Probably. Even though, goddamn, it would be so amazing, him throwing to Kittle, and Samuel, and Aiyuk, McCaffrey. Oh, God, it's just great. To go to the Titans with Nick Westbrook-Akine and Derrick Henry, it's just, that's Puke Town. We're in,
Treylon Burks and Chiga Okonkwo?
Treylon Burks. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
Okay, a bunch of unproven guys that flashed. That's all you're getting in Tennessee with, one of these, bull-headed coaches, with revolving the offense around Derrick Henry. The whole thing stinks. But bigger picture is at least it would sideline Ryan Tannehill. At least we get more quality pieces in play weekly in fantasy football with Trey Lance in Tennessee, right? Because no one would ever want having Ryan Tannehill as a starting quarterback in the pool, especially in Superflex. It's annoying that you even think about him, consider him. Get out of here. The faster we can move on from these kinds of quarterbacks, the better.
Yeah, well, Theo, Titans are the team to watch here for Trey Lance because there's also rumors out there that they want to move up to the number 3 overall pick in the real NFL draft, trading with the Cardinals, and that's probably for Anthony Richardson if he's on the board or another quarterback. You're not moving up like that for a defensive player.
Oh, 100%. If they're moving up, it's absolutely for a quarterback, and that would get me really excited. Like the Titans getting Anthony Richardson, that would be an exciting landing spot for him because, like Matt said, Ryan Tannehill's not a guy we want to think about for fantasy, but as a bridge quarterback, I think that would be a great landing spot for Richardson where he could sit on the bench until he's ready, have Tannehill start, maybe 8 games, 6 games, and then move in with Richardson where I think it would be ideal. And, we talk about like the antiquated, Mike Vrabel, but Richardson would run for a ton of yards in that offense. I mean, he'd be immediately good in fantasy. So I would not dislike that at all. And I'm assuming that Richardson is the guy for them if they move up, Alan. Would you also guess on that?
That's got to be. It just has to be, unless we're getting Malik Willis again, right? Unless we're all like, hey, the athletic.
No. I think it's locked in. I think it's all done. I think it's Stroud, Young, Richardson, Levis. I think it's locked in 1, 2, 3, 4. I think the NFL draft starts with pick 5.
I mean, we say this every year, though, and then we get surprised. Even just think about Baker Mayfield wasn't expected to be the number 1 overall pick until the day before. Malik Willis was supposed to be a top 5 pick. Oh, wait, he wasn't picked. Maybe it's top 12. Wait, maybe it's late first round. It's definitely second round. It's there. Every year this happens to us where we think the quarterbacks, but Mac Jones falls to 15. Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes fall to 10 and 12 or whatever they went. So what we think we know right now, it's just we don't know. I think that the Stroud and Young are definitely 1-2, and then it's anybody's game. But you mentioned Dalvin Cook before, Podfather. Who are some of the veteran running backs that you think can be moved in the real NFL draft that are actually going to affect our fantasy football and specifically our dynasty teams? Start with Cook. I think him moving to another team doesn't hurt his value, but it will hurt his market value in dynasty trades.
He's in a great spot now with the Vikings. Right? Alexander Mattison is not a threat. Right? Alexander Mattison is a plug-and-play replacement for DFS, where you can put up 25 fantasy points a game with volume in a top offense. But I mean, there's nothing that he does better than Dalvin Cook. So Dalvin Cook's in a great spot. Most of the places Dalvin Cook would go, I think, would hurt his dynasty value. Do you agree with that, Theo?
Yes, I think it's hard to find a landing spot that would really, really prop him up. Besides Miami would be the one where I think you could kind of paint yourself a picture that Dalvin Cook would do very well in that offense. We like the scheme of the offense, and the running back position was successful last year, albeit with multiple guys. But yeah, Minnesota is a great spot for him. So most likely it's a downgrade for Cook. But I think from a dynasty perspective, Matt, it could kind of increase his window where he could have 2 years where he's a feature back in a new offense. So maybe it increases his longevity would be kind of the silver lining, but he'd be more likely an RB2 than an RB1 with most of these landing spots. And like Buffalo has been mentioned, I think they're going to do something splashy on draft night offensively. I think going and having James Cook and Dalvin Cook in the same backfield, like that would be pretty cool.
And
that would be
tapping
pretty cool.
the Vikings for another skill position player.
Yeah. So that worked out. It worked out the last time. So
why do we need the draft? We don't need the draft. We have the Vikings.
There you go.
Right? That's what Buffalo's thinking. We'll get Diggs, we'll get Dalvin. Yeah, that's all we need. Yeah. Another team that I think is interesting is Cincinnati. And that Cincinnati doesn't have a lot of needs. Right? You see this happening with Buffalo with James Cook. It's like the second round, they're like, I guess we could just go running back. We use analytics and we know that this position's not that valuable, but as long as the guy catches passes, right? And we don't have that many needs left. I think we can just go running back here. Why not? And with Cincinnati, I think that it was clear in the playoffs that they don't necessarily think that Joe Mixon moves the needle. If they're going to play Samaje Perine on key downs, the last 2 years they've been playing Samaje Perine on key downs in the playoffs. It's clear they don't think that highly of him, at least in the coaching staff, right? The coaching staff is not like, this guy's not a big difference maker for us. Now he has behavioral issues off the field where he's intersecting with law enforcement. That's never good. That's not a good look for the team. So now they're incentivized to do something and upgrade. Why wouldn't the Bengals draft running back? Like, can't the Bengals draft Bijan? Isn't that in play? But he won't be there that late, right? I think the worry is that now with Mel Kiper having him in the top 10, it's highly unlikely that Bijan makes it to the late first round. Charbonnet, Gibbs. I mean, they let Samaje Perine go. They have a huge void after Mixon, but I just think they should just bring in a Charbonnet and then dump Mixon. That's very much in play, I believe.
So I think that one would be interesting. It's kind of like it could go two ways here, Matt. Do they just choose to simply replace Perine through the draft, and they'd have some sort of a split backfield with a younger player maybe taking a big leap in year two, and they just keep Mixon, through all the off-field stuff? Or do they go really bold and, like you said, take the best player available? And Alan, we talk about how Bijan won't be there, but I think if Bijan starts sliding into like that 20th overall, 21st overall, Cincinnati could leap the Baltimore Ravens, who have been one of those teams that have been mentioned for Bijan. and not allow a team in their division to get Bijan. I could see that one.
Here's the problem, and I agree with what you just said. I think a team might do that, but now you're not only paying your first-round pick for him, you're paying a third with that first to move up. So that's the problem. So you're already going to get roasted, maybe not with Bijan for taking the first-round running back, but now when you've paid a tax, I think that there could be some blowback with that. So that's why I would say he's not someone you're going to trade up for just based on how modern NFL analytics work. Guys, we were talking about some of these other running backs. I want everyone in the chat right now to comment. Who do you think are the veteran running backs specifically that could be traded on draft night, or the unsigned ones like Kareem Hunt, like Leonard Fournette? Can these guys be signed immediately after the draft? So put which running back that's a veteran and where do you think they'll go, whether it's free agency or trade, in the chat right now. We want to hear from you. Wide receivers, guys. I want to move over to the wide receivers because the wide receiver market, everyone believes that this draft is a little bit down from years past. We'll kick it over to Matt this time first and then back over to Theo. But some of the veterans, could they be moved? We're hearing rumors about DeAndre Hopkins could be straight up released. A lot of teams are going to be interested in him. Mike Evans is a potential veteran that could be moved. Even someone down the list, Jerry Jeudy has been rumored to be moved, and could that be good for some of the ancillary pieces of Denver like Tim Patrick? So talk to me a little bit about the veteran wide receivers you think could be changing values in Dynasty.
Why? What is the rush to trade Jeudy? How is this a thing? How did this become a topic of conversation or a possibility? Why? He's on a rookie deal. He had a good year. What's the problem? It's very rare that a team that has a quality defense that wants to be competitive has a productive first-round rookie wide receiver on his rookie contract that they're not talking about extending, they're talking about trading. It's odd. That one is very weird to me. I don't understand it. And when I don't understand the logic behind it, sometimes I think, well, this maybe is something that someone grabbed onto at one point. There was some rumor, there was some comment that was latched onto, but actually doesn't have any real basis in logic. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, DeAndre Hopkins makes no sense on this Cardinals team. Like, he should be gone. Mike Evans, even less sense on the Buccaneers. These are teams that must blow it up, that need to rebuild, and the last thing they need is a 30-year-old wide receiver who has a year or two left. Why? How are they still in the... How? I just think it's the structure of the NFL calendar and when incentives kick in and when bonuses need to be paid are the only reasons why Hopkins and Evans are still on their existing teams.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Matt. I mean, I think that I'd be very, very surprised if DeAndre Hopkins is an Arizona Cardinal to start the season. I think kind of the writing's on the wall. He'll be somewhere else. Evans is interesting because Evans is like almost legendary status as a Buck. And oftentimes in these organizations, there's a little bit of internal pressure to kind of keep these guys around. He's done so much there for his career, but I agree with you. He does not make sense based on the makeup of the team. Certainly with Baker Mayfield there, he doesn't make a lot of sense. They should kind of cash out and get what they can for him as well. And then Jeudy, that one's interesting, Alan. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me because, again, like Matt said, he's still on the rookie deal and he looked very good to end last season. Okay. But maybe they view him as more valuable to move right now because they're not going to look to extend him, that they don't view him as a long-term piece for whatever reason with the new coaching staff in town. I, for one, think that Jeudy will be a Bronco, though, to start the season. I mean, there's too many reasons. Like Matt brought up, I mean, the contract's cheap, the production's there. He's a reliable receiver, and I don't think Sean Payton's coming there to lose a bunch of games. I mean, Judy's the kind of guy that's going to help him win games. So I'd be surprised if Judy's moved. But I agree with you. Hopkins definitely gone. Evans is like the question mark guy, and Jeudy, I would lean towards he'll be there.
Those close to the Broncos, though, say that Sean Payton is not exactly happy with Jeudy, and they don't have a first-round pick. So maybe those two things add up to answer the question, Podfather.
Right. I think what happens is, we've talked about this on many occasions, is that you have certain coaches like Kyle Shanahan, like Sean Payton, whose egos drive the bus, right? And if they arrive and they text a player, right? This is me texting, right? They're texting the player. And that player doesn't text them right back. All of a sudden, they're on the trade block. It happens that quickly, right? Like Kyle Shanahan wants to set up a Zoom call with Trey Lance to go over the playbook, and Trey Lance ghosts him. Trade block. See what I'm saying? Like that's how these dictator coaches operate. So I don't dispute that at all. Like I don't doubt that that's how it plays out at all. It's illogical. It's demoralizing to the team, but it's how these guys operate because they believe their systems trump all, right? It's like I need the right players for my system, not I need to build a system for my players. Those kinds of coaches typically have this attitude, and when they get away from a Drew Brees, then the question is, well, how good are you really? And then we find out, oh, wait, you're not that good after all. Aw, you just had a big attitude and a big ego and got to coach under Drew Brees, and he got to basically run the offense, and you got the credit. Oh, that's too bad. With Hopkins, quickly, only $14 million of cash due to him. $20 million in cash due, right? And they have a debt. They have an out, right? So they will save money. The cap hit is $30 million. The dead cap is only $22 million. And the cash is only 19 plus million. So we're talking about saving 10 million plus against the cap and a bunch of cash. So the Cardinals are incentivized to either trade or cut Hopkins. If they trade him, then they would restructure so that the cap hit wouldn't be 30 million. So as soon as he's traded, there would be a restructure to spread the remainder of his contract out for whatever team acquires him. So I think that's exactly what's going to happen there. And with Jeudy, I also believe that if I were a general manager, I would put him on the block because I would want to see what he's worth, right? I don't believe he's an alpha. He's not a player I would build around. He is a player I would absolutely deal if his value got overinflated. I'm skeptical that there's a team in the league that's going to be like, hey, yeah, this is the guy, right? This guy, he's undersized. He's not that fast. He's just an incredible route runner. He has this one skill, and that one skill can give you like 900 plus yards any given season. And it's a valuable piece to an offense, but it's not a number one. It's not a primary receiver. He's great in the role that he's in. I think that it's perfect. That's the thing. I like him next to Sutton, and I like him with Patrick in the slot. I like them being able to flip-flop and like have Jeudy in the slot and have Patrick in the slot. I think it's a configuration that makes a lot of sense. So logically, I think you would need there to be a rift between Peyton and Jeudy for a trade to happen.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's not an alpha, but the wide receiver position is so valuable right now. We saw the second rounder for Claypool. We would agree that Jeudy is a higher level player than that. We also
saw want a first rounder for him.
Yeah.
And then we saw the Hollywood Brown trade, I think would be a similar kind of a player who we don't view as a proper traditional wide receiver one. Hollywood Brown was moved for a first round pick. So it would be kind of a similar situation with like that, Matt. And just going through like the first round, I'm not sure Green Bay would do it at 15. I'm not sure New England would do it at 14, but you get down to the 20s, like New York, Dallas, Buffalo, Kansas City. Those teams, you could kind of paint yourself a picture trading a first for Jeudy.
It doesn't have to
Dallas.
be a 23.
Dallas they got Brandon Cooks. Why would they need Jeudy?
They got Brandon Cooks, but I would not be shocked if they add another receiver. I think that's the way
Chargers.
the offense.
I think the Chargers. Well, they won't go in the division.
They won't go in the division.
They won't go in the division. So the Vikings need a number 2.
That's a good call. Vikings as well.
The Vikings really need a number 2 badly. KJ Osborne, as much as we love him, he's a good little slot receiver. He's versatile, but he's not a true number 2. I mean, that's ideal. I mean, this is the perfect world for Jeudy. He could be efficient. Like, he could be the perfect second read. Oh, my God. I would love him. Oh, my God. His value. Woo! His value in Minnesota for Dynasty. Oh, baby.
And Matt, it could be a perfect storm. Move on from Dalvin Cook, a little less emphasis on the running back position, and you'd have a Judy, Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson offense. That would be pretty good for fantasy.
Oh, pretty good.
Remember, it doesn't have to be a 23 first either. Any team could trade their next year's first for him. They would take that in a heartbeat, it sounds like. I mean, just based on if you're believing some of the reports that are close to the team guys. So I love that call, though. I think that Judy going to a fresh start would be good for his dynasty value, especially if it's in a team that is known to throw the football. You just a minute ago, we talked about DeAndre Hopkins. And in Superflex leagues, especially in startups, we're at the end, we're just grasping for any quarterback that's on an NFL roster. And a lot of time, Kyler Murray is going to be out for, I think, at least most of the year, the first 2 months. I mean, you could say 6 weeks, some can say 10 weeks. Who's going to be starting the first month and a half at the quarterback position for the Cardinals? Because that player is going to have Superflex value if you're desperate. You drafted Pat Mahomes with the first overall pick, and then you just waited on the position. And now Brock Purdy gets scooped up. Ryan Tannehill gets scooped up. I mean, who's that guy that you can maybe even plug in there for the first month and a half of the season?
McSorley.
It's probably McSorley. I mean, Colt McCoy is 36 years old. I mean, McSorley, it's ugly, but I think that he has definitely more fantasy upside than McCoy. It's not even close. And I don't know. It's a very ugly situation. There's potential that it could be a quarterback who's not even on the roster right now starting for them based on how bad the injury is.
Well, that's the other thing. I think that the probabilities are 60% not on the roster. Okay.
Tannehill.
Right. 25% McSorley, 15% McCoy.
McCoy's hurt. He's had surgery.
Yeah,
he's not a lock to be ready for the season. That's why
what I'm saying.
I asked.
That's why it's such a low percentage, Alan.
Yeah,
well, percentages work, right?
McCoy should be back for week 1, correct, Alan? This is not as long term as Kyler. Yeah,
right. Like maybe. I mean, he's not ready today. So if you're the Cardinals, you can be like, oh yeah, he'll be ready. He's our guy. Like you need to make a plan just in case. And if McSorley's the plan, then you're basically saying you're tanking for Caleb, right? I mean, you can't throw the first 5 games and say, okay, we're going to catch up after that.
Well, know how bad
athletic. I like McSorley.
We'll know how bad the tank is if David Blau is under center game 1. That's the perfect storm tank. That's the O for the season one. If you want to start an O for the season, you go David Blau, who I believe is still on the roster.
Yeah. People tune into this podcast for all the great Dynasty talk, guys, but they love to hear about the rookies, okay? So I want to just get into the rookies a little bit here. I know the Player Profiler Network has been talking about Israel A the whole week, man, but it's time to really consider, or at least have the discussion, is he the RB4? Is he the RB5? Is he definitely a first-round rookie pick? Because if you were sitting there at pick 10, 11, 12, you basically said, man, I made the playoffs, the Final Four in my league, but I'm just not getting a good rookie. Are you getting a good one now, Podfather?
Will he be there?
Should be.
That's the question. Will he be there at the 111, 112? And single quarterback? I don't know. I don't know. He's a top 5 running back. He's a top 5. If you love speed, right, and you love Devon A-Chain, then you must love Israel Abanikanda, because we're talking about a guy that's, 25 pounds heavier? Right, so I think that's really my cutoff. It's like if we're having a logical conversation about where you're going to draft Abanikanda versus Roshan Johnson, Kendre Miller, Tajay Spears, these kinds of players, you can't have A-Chain ahead of Abanikanda unless you believe that, A-Chain, he's got skill sets that Abanikanda just doesn't have, and then that's just not true, right? That's not true. So A-Chain was not this, target magnet, right, in college. Yes, he had 36 catches last year. Good, right? But the target share was 12%. Wasn't, 50 catch season like we've seen, like with the best running backs, and he doesn't have that sort of lateral quickness that a guy like Tajay Spears has. So I think that the conversation really is between Spears and A-Chain. It ceased becoming about A-Chain versus Abanikanda. As soon as we saw the 40 time come in, and we know it's sub 4.4 for a guy that's 215 pounds, I mean, that is how a guy goes from RB10 to RB5 instantly. That's how he can double his lifetime value instantly, because everything changes. The whole archetype of the player changes if you tell me he's that fast. Now, we had suspicions that he was that fast, right? But we've been told there were a lot of guys who were this fast and that fast, and then we got to wait for the stopwatches to come in. Then, okay, now we know. Now we can make a move, right? That's the thing with our dynasty rankings on Player Profiler, which Theo is now the chief rankings officer of Dynasty at Player Profiler. He's not just going to vault a guy because he's heard rumors that he's super fast. We're going to wait. We're conservative. When it happens, though, once we have the data, that's when the conservatism is gone. That's when we're just going to be vaulting guys for all the right reasons at that point. And if you don't like it, if it makes you feel uncomfortable that a guy like Abanikanda would jump so much, then again, you don't have to subscribe. You don't. If it makes you, if it's jarring to feel that way, then it's okay. I understand. You want it to be a softer, slower, gradual escalation. You don't want to be jarred out of your seat with this guy running a 4.3.
I mean, Abanikanda is really fast. And the guy also had a 41-inch vertical leap. He was a big-time producer in college. And the thing I really like about Abanikanda, Alan, is he's 20 years old. So this is kind of like the Javonte Williams when he came out was 20 years old. Having the little bit of extra time where these guys are a little bit younger and they're still going to get that sort of draft capital is very appealing. And you start going through the second and not the second's going to be difficult, but the third round I think is legitimately in Abanikanda's wheelhouse right now. And you start looking through this third round, there's at least 10 landing spots in the third round, which are going to move him up. So Matt brings up like the 111 for Abanikanda. I think at the end of the day, there's a chance he's like the 107, the 106, if it all falls right. Like, guys, if he gets drafted by Arizona at 66 overall, Denver at 67 or 68, and they really view Javonte as maybe a long-term mess. I mean, you start going down this third round, there's a ton of landing spots. How about 72 to Tennessee as the actual Derrick Henry replacement? Like, you start getting excited about some of these landing spots from the third round down to like the very early fourth. I think he's going to go somewhere there in the draft, and I think we're going to be a lot more excited about him on Sunday after the NFL draft than we are even today. But I mean, he checks off every single box. It's kind of like when we talked about the Rachaad White profile, like Abanikanda is that sort of player. Like, we want to like guys like this, and for a reason. We don't have to worry about them size-wise. We don't have to worry about them speed-wise. And with Abanikanda, the production is there and the age is there. So, I mean, he's checking off a ton of boxes.
Yeah, there isn't a team that can't use him. And that's what's so great about him, is that he fits on almost every single team, every single depth chart. I can't think of a bad spot, and there's not a lot of running backs, Podfather, that we could say that about.
Mid-first,
yep.
That's where I see him going. That's where I see him going in single quarterback leagues. And then, yes, it's got to be super flex. You want to get him at the turn, it's got to be super flex. That's the thing. And that's who I'm looking for. I mean, it's interesting. It's going to be between him and Zay Flowers for me. There's going to be teams where I go Zay because I need wide receiver, because again, I'm not drafting based on need, but if all else is equal, then I'm going to go on need. And so there's going to be some teams where, we start 3 receivers. Okay, I'm going to go Zay Flowers. Or teams where I'm weak at running back, I'm definitely going Abanikanda easy. Right? Easy. It's a similar situation with like a Charbonnet and a Jordan Addison. Right? So if I need running back or I'm on then Charbonnet's easy, slam dunk. But if I'm strong at running back and the format, you start 3 receivers, Jordan Addison looks pretty good. So that's kind of where I'm at with these guys.
If you're a profile drafter, like if Zay Flowers is a first round wide receiver in the real NFL draft and Israel Abanikanda is a 3rd round running back, I think you're going to make money in fantasy football drafting the profile of the first round receiver. I think that's usually so. You bring up an interesting question. If you're evaluating them for fantasy football equal, Theo, are you a profile drafter? Let's just get into that world for a minute. Zay Flowers is the 28th pick or somewhere around there, and Israel A is a mid-3rd rounder in the real NFL draft.
Well, I think that just when you're talking about wide receivers versus running backs, the sheer number of wide receivers who go in the first round, you also have to weigh that in. A lot of the biggest, running back producers in fantasy are day 2 guys because there's just not a whole lot of them drafted in the first round anymore. I mean, we're talking about this year, Bijan Robinson will be a lock first round pick, but we probably won't see another running back drafted in the first round. It would be cool if they did. We love that for fantasy, but I think when you're talking about wide receiver versus running back, you have to weigh certain other factors. Like for me, I really want a running back who's a day 2 guy. If they're a day 1, that's great. I worry about day 3 guys just because, the hit rates are not nearly as good. But Zay Flowers, I love Zay Flowers. But like Matt said, I do think it could be a pretty close wheelhouse with him and Abanikanda if Abanikanda lands well. Because, Alan, with that sort of explosive athletic ability, the ability to catch the football, his age, and then we add draft capital to it, you're talking about Abanikanda might be a guy who year 2 we're taking in like the 2nd round of redraft. Like his window to get really, really impactful for our fantasy football teams might be really, really quick. And I love Zay Flowers. But again, I don't necessarily think we need to. If for wide receivers, certainly, I think that if it's 2 guys in a tie, you can let the landing spot and the NFL draft capital be kind of like your guide. It's not necessarily always the best process either, but when it's cross positional arguments, you have to weigh things a little bit differently. So I think Matt's pretty spot on. I think that's kind of where we're going to be.
Podfather.
Well, if you look at like the last wide receiver drafted in the first round versus a day 3 running back with a profile we love, think about Antonio Gibson, right? 3rd round running back, okay? Versus, let's say, Brandon Aiyuk. Right now, Brandon Aiyuk has more dynasty value, barely, than Antonio Gibson. And Antonio Gibson's banished. Antonio Gibson had 2 straight 10-touchdown seasons. Antonio Gibson's helped your fantasy team leaps and bounds more than Brandon Aiyuk the last few seasons. Okay, look where we're at right now with Rachaad White versus Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson's best comparable to Zay Flowers. Right now, I know that technically Burks went a pick after. Okay, fair. He shouldn't have, right? But even Burks and Dotson, both are currently behind Rachaad White on our dynasty rankings, and that's where they belong, Alan.
Yeah, the comparison I was going to make, and you brought up a great point with Rachaad White, but what if it's Damian Pierce and Jahan Dotson, right? I mean, because that could be the dichotomy that we're looking at, the early 4th round player. I know I said 3rd round earlier versus even though Treylon Burks was drafted after Jahan Dotson, his ADP was a few spots ahead of him. So
would rather have Pierce. Would rather have Pierce. I think that's actually straightforward. Now, I'm not even talking about the wide receivers with profiles that we said stay away from. Right? Notice I didn't mention Henry Ruggs. Like, I'm not cherry picking. Right? You can't accuse me of cherry picking. I said this is we'll talk about Aiyuk, we'll talk about Dotson and Burks. These are fair comparisons. It would be unfair for me to bring up Tony, where everybody knew that was a terrible pick and a reach by Gettleman. We're not talking about Ruggs, which is one of the all-time, most obvious bust picks. Regardless of what happened to him off the field, we knew the guy with like a 17% dominator rating, one of the least versatile wide receivers ever drafted in the first round, was not a good idea. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about people that we think are quality receivers. Aiyuk is a quality receiver. Dotson's a quality receiver. And yet, because they're not number ones, because they profile as number twos, of all the receivers we talked about so far, really it's only Burks that really profiles as a proper number one. I want the every down workhorse running back. I want the running back with the speed and the receiving skills. And if for some reason he gets on the wrong side of a coach at some point down the road and he starts to lose a bunch of carries because of it, like what happened to Antonio Gibson, fine. Our process at Player Profiler is that we're going to be out ahead on Antonio Gibson, and we're going to give you those 2 10-touchdown seasons, and then you can thank us later.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a philosophical dynasty conversation, Alan, because it's when it comes to these running backs like an Antonio Gibson, who were, the 10 touchdown, or if you want to think about it, points per game, he had 2 15-point per game plus seasons. Those kind of guys have more peak dynasty seasonal value. So in terms of winning dynasty championships, you don't have them for as long as, say, a wide receiver. But in terms of their peak dynasty seasonal value, your championship window kind of guys, those guys matter a lot. So if you want a guy who's going to be a decent player for 6-7 years, maybe that's your approach to dynasty. But in terms of a running back who can give me a 3-year window where he's like a top 15 redraft running back for 3 straight seasons, that's kind of the conversation we're having. So guys like Abanikanda, maybe you certainly have a little more risk. I mean, when you try to weigh out hit rates of first round NFL players versus, third and fourth, obviously the first rounders have better hit rates, but the risk versus reward is, like Matt said, you get a potential RB1 and you have multiple seasons of RB1 production. And that kind of thing is, especially when you put positional scarcity into the mix, it's like you gotta expose yourself to those kind of guys in Dynasty.
And not to mention, try buying a running back in Dynasty Fantasy Football. You're always going to overpay, whereas the Jahan Dotson, those guys can be acquired for fair trade value. So that all does make a lot of sense, guys. But the other go ahead, Matt. You wanted to tag on to that?
What about Aiyuk? What about Aiyuk right now? What about Aiyuk before he goes to the Chiefs?
The Aiyuk is interesting because one of the sharpest FFPC players that I know traded a bunch of times for Aiyuk and actually completed one Aiyuk trade with me. It's a good friend of mine, Austin Martin, who's probably like the Chad Schroeder of Dynasty in FFPC, like a big time high stakes Dynasty player. He's been acquiring Aiyuk shares constantly all year. And there's been some chatter about this, like out of San Francisco, that maybe they would move on from Aiyuk. This could be like the draft night shock, Matt. I'm a little upset I moved one Aiyuk share because if he goes to Kansas City, that is going to be just an unbelievable landing spot. I mean, the guy will be a rocket ship in best ball. It'll be unbelievable to see like where he vaults to like the week after in like FFPC and Underdog. You got to think about Aiyuk connect with Pat Mahomes would just be wild.
Yeah, they need first round pick too, San Francisco. So
what if that happens though? If you have Aiyuk, you instantly put him on the block, right?
Do you? I mean, I don't know. It kind of depends on your goals because if you could consider it to be he gets a dynasty value spike, you want to cash out, but he could be really, really useful this season in that offense attached to Mahomes. I mean, you could paint a picture where Aiyuk is like sneaking into wide receiver 1 status just based on he could have 12 touchdowns and he could get deep in that offense. I mean, you got Travis Kelce next to him. I mean, it's kind of a scary thought because I do believe Aiyuk is a very, very talented player. And I think potentially we see a little more from him with the quarterback upgrade and, not being around Deebo Samuel. I mean, the guy's, I believe a lot in his talent and he would basically escape being in a 4-target offense to being, the clear number 2 because McCaffrey's also getting his share of targets there that, we saw it with McKinnon, but we don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case this year in Kansas City. So I don't know. I could paint a picture both ways, Matt. You could, if you get a massive, massive trade offer, it's always good to cash out. But if I had a championship window and Aiyuk was like my wide receiver 2 or my flex, I would feel pretty good about that in a Kansas City uniform.
it's funny you guys are talking about Aiyuk as a sell a little bit because, and I like that you put the brakes on that a little bit, Theo, because I remember when I was working for the guys over at Roster Watch a couple years ago when Aiyuk came out, we had him best compared to, like, we saw Odell Beckham-like traits, and that Shanahan would have taken him at pick 12 but moved back because he knew he can get him at 24. I'm seeing an Aiyuk with Patrick Mahomes as an unlocking of his upside. I mean, we've only seen the floor of Aiyuk based on what his prospect profile was, Podfather.
Aiyuk is very interesting, right? He's a quality player. He's never going to get the volume in San Francisco just because they skew run heavy and they have all these other weapons, and that he's going to be efficient. He's not going to be as efficient wherever he goes. He's more alpha E than Judy, but he's not quite there, right? So I think he'd be overmatched as a true number one, getting all the attention of a defense. But he would be incredibly productive. It would be really cool to see. His ceiling, given his size and his athletic profile and his production history, it's not like top 10 wide receiver, but right in that 10 to 20 zone, I could see him settling in there in the right system. There's also some rumors that have started around Mac Jones recently. Have you guys seen this?
Oh yeah,
I saw that with Belichick, not guaranteeing him and elevating Zappy, and I don't know.
No. Actively shopping him.
But I don't buy the trade rumors. I saw that as well. Would they really go into the year with Zappy?
Like, they want Lamar. Lamar has talked about his desire to go to New England. He and his mom are pushing that. And if you're Belichick and you're trying to win now, Belichick's in his 70s. Like, this is the way. This is the ripcord. If you're Bill Belichick, the ripcord to pull going up against Josh Allen every year is a true difference maker at quarterback, someone that can really move the needle, like a weapon X, right? If you get an X factor at quarterback, that could be the way. He could absolutely delude himself into thinking, "Oh, if we get Lamar Jackson, that we could beat Buffalo." I can see that.
So,
do you remember
Mac Jones and 14 overall? Is that the rumor out there? I mean, that would kind of make sense if you're. I guess if you're New England, that would be kind of the what would make sense giving that up. Mac Jones to Baltimore with the 14th overall pick. Yeah, Matt, you might be onto something there. I don't know. For some reason, I don't see Lamar ending up in New England. It just seems.
Did you see how the rumor came out though? It was that Meek Mill, the rapper, said that told Robert Kraft. Who knew that Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, was a Meek Mill fan? So Lamar texted Meek Mill, their friends, and then Meek Mill tells Robert Kraft, and then obviously Bill Belichick shot it down right away. And
you know who wants Mac Jones, right? Josh McDaniels.
Yep. They just signed Brian Hoyer, by the way. Another McDaniels.
They're getting the band back together in Las Vegas. They're getting the Patriots band back together. I could see it happening. You could see it. You could see it so clearly.
That would be wild. That would be wild to see Lamar end up in New England. Crazier things have happened, fellas.
Yep. Then you're back to your Alfred Morris corollary with Ramondre Stevenson, Podfather.
I know. Well, speaking of crazy things, have you seen this? Let's see I want to see if you guys see if you've seen this at all. Tell me if you've seen this. Have you seen this before? Have you seen this? Because I'm in Connecticut. So a married Connecticut lunch lady, it's important that she's married apparently, sent nude images for months to a high school student, and she was arrested. Alan, your thoughts?
This is like my biggest kink. I mean, this is my thing. Now I'm all hot and bothered again. I said this a couple podcasts ago that all of these teachers, they're usually better than average looking. Not that I'm a Burt Reynolds or anything like that, but it's I only wish this would have happened to me as a kid, and I would have taken somebody like this. If you're listening to this on the audio podcast, you got to see the video of this. This is a dream come true in the world of me.
A lunch lady? Like, how does it? I want to know the first encounter. Like, what is the first encounter?
She gives you an extra chicken McNugget. Like, you're supposed to be an order of 4, she gives you 6 or something, so you already know she's into
the implication. It's the implication.
I just don't understand. Like, when you're going to a high school lunch service, it's so fast. Like, the line is long. They're shuffling you through there. I just don't understand how she could engage with this kid for any length of time that would ultimately lead to nudes being sent. My question always is, who says no, right? Who says no at that point? Because I just remember being so horny in high school that it was like hard to deal with, right? I mean, I was just walking around with a rock hard boner, always trying to figure out new ways to tuck it into my drawstring or under my belt, try to figure out, what to do with this thing. It was always on my mind. It was ridiculous, right? You wonder why, these young men underperform, like in academics and all these areas. You see, you're seeing all these reports, and I'm like, yeah, I remember. It was really distracting and really difficult to get anything done. It's tough. And so if an attractive lunch lady is throwing you extra sloppy joes and nuggets, I mean, you're going to take notice. It's not so with her, the shameful part, not only was he underage, which is why she's arrested, but it's like, hey, lady, like, could you try a little harder? This is too easy. Like, this is why it's exploitive. It's like, this is not a challenge at all. And you should be arrested for doing this. I agree with it 100%. It is assault. They said it was assault, right? And do you agree with that, Alan, that it is assault? Because
this is completely illegal and immoral. But I'm just saying, the fact that it is from that's a woman who's the offender and a boy who is the victim, I think that most common sense people would say it's not as crazy. In fact, that, we would say, hey, when I was 14, 15, 16, I would have loved for this to happen. So, but yes, legally what you're talking about, and we don't approve of this. And the other way, if it was a male teacher, lunch man,
of course,
and this is like, despicable. And I don't know why I feel that way, but I just do.
We're going to need to follow this story as it progresses.
Well, it's going to have to I could go to the arraignment. It's right down the road. Like, I could report live from the courthouse.
Sonic Truth Pod live from the courthouse in Connecticut. That sounds great.
That's right. With this you have to understand, when that flashes across my screen, I'm like,
one more time with it.
I couldn't have snapshotted it fast enough to throw up on the screen during this. I mean, Alan is going to lose his mind when he sees this.
I got a chance to see it yesterday, Alan, and Matt and I talked about it. We wanted it to be a on-air reveal, and we got exactly the kind of response we had anticipated. It was legendary, Alan.
And if anyone in the audience sees a similar news story, okay, of some woman doing crazy shit, right?
Or
please send it to me. Podfather at rotounderworld.com, and I will put it up. I mean, the sketchier the better, because there's something about Alan where when women are doing dangerous things,
well, right? I'll give you an example,
and they're pushing the boundaries. He likes to jump into their head and be like, why is she doing this? Why is she so impulsive? Why is she so crazy?
Well, I'll give you a perfect example.
His wheels are just turning. You can see he gets so excited.
Yeah, at my bachelor party, years and years ago, we had a legal stripper dancer come to the room and dance for everybody, and then somebody jokingly asked her to take a number 2 on the counter, and they did it. And I wasn't sexually turned on by it, but I enjoyed watching it. I mean, and so like you just said, I think I'm just, anyone can go to see
Alan,
stripper dance.
What the fuck?
that is awful, Alan. That is just
What
an awful
the
thing.
fuck?
It's just a thing. I was just observing it. I didn't ask for
enjoyed
it.
watching it?
I thought it was fascinating to watch. I'm not saying I didn't get turned
I think that's
on by
what
it.
He's fascinated by this stuff. He's fascinated by these super taboo, or in this case, illegal activities where people are pushing the boundaries of what's socially acceptable to the point that they're going to jail. And Alan's like, how is this possible? How could this person do this? How could they be this impulsive? And like, you must have been. I imagine you fixated.
Oh, I mean, I couldn't.
At this bachelor party. You can't take your eyes off it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was my bachelor party. This is going back 100 years ago, and dancer dancing. Somebody, said, she goes, what do you guys like? What do you want to do? Someone says, get up there and jokingly, they said the words, take a number 2 and on the counter. And sure enough, somebody paid and it got done.
Alan, was this on Long Island, the bachelor party?
Vegas.
Okay. I was going to say
sense.
that won't. Yeah, it makes more sense for Vegas. If it was Long Island, I would have been shockingly disgusted. Vegas, it's still disgusting, but it's Vegas.
Wait, what? Why is your disgust level differ based on the?
Because I feel like it's more of a laissez-faire attitude in Vegas. A little more anything goes for Alan on his bachelor party. If he did that on if one of his buddies requested that on the home turf, then that's even worse, Matt. It's even worse.
Special
So if
occasion.
it happened at the DoubleTree in Port Jeff, you would have been you would have been
100%.
particularly offended.
The Comac
Disgusted?
Motor Lodge, I would have been disgusted.
Oh, disgusting, right? Yeah, because it's happening. It's happening around the corner from me. This is not acceptable. It has to be far, far away.
It's got to be in Vegas.
Yeah,
Vegas
you made a great
Reno,
point.
That's it.
Right. You would expect this somewhere at either, Long Island's, it's too classy, the strip clubs, right? Is that what I'm making a joke? Because everyone's talking about classy now as it refers to the women's basketball game. I thought that was kind of like a cliche word. But Vegas does make it acceptable. Anything goes in Vegas. Everything stays in Vegas.
No, not acceptable. I didn't say acceptable. I said
Theo's into it. He's into it. I can tell he's into it.
I want to clarify on the record. I'm not into it. But the fact that it's in Vegas and not down the street from your house, your buddy requesting it is not acceptable, but it's slightly more understandable than if it was on Long Island or in Connecticut for that matter.
So, but I think we can surmise that she had to go, right? I mean, if she didn't have to go, I don't think it's possible, right?
That's the single most asked question. And there was some straining and there was some finger manipulating going on to get it done on her own part, but it didn't take long, if I remember. Now, again, it's you're right though. There must have been some pre-eating done because it didn't take long. It was more or less on demand, and it was solid too, by the way.
It's an interesting career choice that you would go into a job like that. With that job, you would think she would plan accordingly beforehand, but I think she goes into jobs being able to do that. Your buddy probably was the one who arranged this and knew that this was on the menu. Your buddy is the real sicko here, Alan. I hope you've lost contact with this person.
You kidding me? It's like my best friend in the world, this guy. Through thick and thin, baby. Thick and thin.
Alan, you walked us through the process of how it happened based on when she ate. This is insane where the show has gone. We've gone to a place I've never seen the show go. I mean, I thought this lunch lady story was fascinating and that you would love it. I did not see it going this far. Let's give the people something football related.
All right.
To close this thing out, please, because I want to ask Theo a question. I think, Alan, maybe you've said enough for the next few minutes. Charbonnet versus Gibbs, Theo. Is this now a conversation for the NFL draft? Could Charbonnet go ahead of Gibbs?
I think he absolutely could go ahead of Gibbs. For fantasy, the lean for me is always going to be Gibbs,
Right.
because I love the pass catching ability. But I think in terms of an NFL team, yeah, there's a chance Charbonnet gets drafted before him. It could be a few picks before him. I would still bet on Gibbs though, being the number 2 back drafted. If I had to like,
what is the evidence that the NFL? Because I know that Charbonnet is a running back that we like, right? Metrics people love the guy that's has the size, has the 30 catches on his resume, right? Has the dominant seasons. He's done it year over year. So he's checking a lot of. He's a box stuffing running back, right? We love it. And by the way, for everyone that's talking about the fact he's a senior, breakout age and year drafted matters a hell of a lot less for running backs. I know it's nice. It's nice that Abanikanda is only 20. It's nice for a different reason, though. I want to make sure to mention this. The best part about Abanikanda being 20 is you get more years before he reaches the age apex. Because in Dynasty, it's all about maxing out these years in your early 20s. So if you get his age 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, that's 5 years before the age apex. That's a big deal, as opposed to a guy that comes out at 23, like Rachaad White. Yes, there's less tread worn, right, at age 25, because he's only been in the NFL a few years by that time. But the age apex is still the age apex. Like, if Rachaad White were younger, his lifetime value would be significantly higher, actually, if you were a couple of years younger, but more because you get those years of production, not because it's some indicator of quality, which is what the breakout age is and year drafted is for wide receivers. So it's a different thing. With wide receivers, they play longer, right? You really want to hit that window with wide receivers, age 25, 26, 27. That's why we're trading for DJ Moore, right? Now is the time to get those receivers. Whereas you want the running backs on their rookie deals, okay? But we care about how old these guys are when they're wide receivers because it is more a signal of quality. It's not so much with running backs. So with Zach Charbonnet, the fact that he's slightly older than some of these guys is noteworthy, but it's not a major indicator of his ability to break out. And the fact that he is 22 and not 23 means that we still have at least 3 super productive years ahead before we even talk about the age apex or him, being, post apex back.
Yeah, when you talk about the ages, guys, the ages don't matter as much, especially like look at someone like Isaiah Spiller, right? He turned out to be what? He was 20 years old or 21 years old. And then you have Rachaad White, who is considered an older prospect now, who Player Profiler has.
Alan, that was a great point. You've recovered well from your stripper talk right into one of the best examples I've seen recently, where you had people talking themselves into Spiller because of how young he was and talking themselves out of White because of how old he was, when that is the wrongest of processes.
Yeah. One's worthless. The other one's a top 12 option.
Yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, both these guys are going to be second-round draft picks. And I think that for me, it's certain NFL teams are going to value Charbonnet. He's a 215-pound back. But Gibbs is that incredible receiving ability that certain teams are going to see Gibbs and say, hey, that guy's the missing piece. And that's the guy we really want for our offense. And I think certain teams might see Gibbs as a guy that we can use in a committee. And certain teams are going to see Gibbs and say that that's a guy that we're going to have as like one of the focal points of our offense. So I think it's going to be close. If I still had to bet on it, Gibbs is going off the board first. But I would not be shocked on draft night if Charbonnet goes a few picks ahead, maybe 10 picks ahead.
Question for you, Theo. If you're an NFL team, do you go Abanikanda or Charbonnet?
I think that's a difficult question. I think at the end of the day, there's going to be more teams that go with Charbonnet. I always want the upside. I love these hyper athletic backs, but Charbonnet is by all accounts a very good athlete. We talked about he hit the 40 numbers we wanted to see at the combine at 215. He was a little bit lighter than we thought he was going to be. We wanted 225 maybe for him, but 215 is fine. So I don't know. I think that for me, it's probably Charbonnet. I think you kind of know a little bit more what you're getting there. But I always, Matt, if I was a GM, my teams would be really, really, really good, or we would completely fall apart because I would always lean towards the upside kind of guys. That's just the way I roll.
Wait, so what's your answer? Final answer, Theo.
Final answer is Charbonnet. I believe in Charbonnet. Yeah. I believe that he's got a very clean profile. I believe we're going to see multiple RB2 seasons, and I think he could sneak in as an RB1. So I'm going to go Charbonnet if I was picking for an NFL team. As much as I love Abanikanda, I think he's going to end up being a third rounder, whereas I see Charbonnet going in the second round.
The answer is Israel Abanikanda.
Love it, Matt. Flag plant.
Hey, you like that video? Be sure to subscribe and activate those alerts so you get notified as soon as new videos drop. And be sure to check out PlayerProfiler.com. We have all the tools for you to dominate every type of fantasy league. We have a draft kit, Dynasty Deluxe, data analysis, DFS Dominator, and don't forget the player rankings to rule them all.